everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Sunset Flip Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Edgar Soto. Today, my co-host, Henry Cruz, and I have the pleasure of having a very special guest, one of the fastest rising wrestlers today, the Notorious Mimi. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm pumped to be here.
Thank you for joining us today and taking the time to discuss your professional wrestling career with us. We really appreciate it. You trained professional wrestling at the Monster Factory located in Paulsboro, New Jersey. What were your early training days like?
My early training days were definitely a little different from most people's early training experience, because when I started training to be a pro wrestler, I was 14. So I couldn't really drive myself to training. I couldn't, there was a lot of questions around how that would go, but it was really cool to get to focus on some of the really basic fundamentals for a while, because there was some concern about having me bump that young. So I focused on like chain wrestling and lockups and like just learning those very fundamental early stages for a long time. And it was a very good foundation, I think.
During your time like in the Monster Factory, like what was your initial reaction when you were told that, your wrestling journey along with 5 other students would be produced in a documentary series?
That was honestly in the works for the longest time, and it was so cool to get to see it come to light. There had been people coming by, working with the potential of doing a project like that from the time I started in like late 2017. So to see it finally come to fruition, in like 2021 was so crazy and so cool. And I felt really fortunate because they hit at a very interesting and fun time of my career. It's cool to have something like that kind of cemented forever. And it was just really awesome to have like an outside film crew and to kind of get a look into a different form of entertainment than traditional, pro wrestling.
Yeah, like a different like perspective.
100%. Like it's, directors and people who film documentaries and docuseries who don't really work in wrestling. They work in more traditional, Hollywood media.
Right.
Gotcha. Right. And by the way, you can catch the 6th episode of the documentary on Apple TV Plus.
You better. There's a free trial.
Right.
There's a lot of free trials, so that's always good.
Yeah, no, you got to take advantage of that. Who or what was your motivation for becoming a professional wrestler?
I always tell people I'm a Sasha Banks girly through and through. I get the Becky comparisons. I don't mind that either. She's awesome. But for me, the reason was always I started watching wrestling in January of 2016, which I know is very recent compared to most people. But having seen like that build up in that WrestleMania match, it was just so motivating to watch those women go out there and absolutely like burn the house down. So that was just really what motivated me to want to get in the ring myself.
Sasha Banks. All right. So that I think that might have answered my second, this upcoming question, but this is a 2-parter. Who's been your favorite opponent that you have faced thus far?
So my first shout out has got to go to who my mom's favorite opponent that I faced so far is, because she is a huge Will Nightingale and Chris Statlander fan. And as you might have seen, I got to wrestle both of them on Rampage. So before that even happened, I texted her and I was like, hey mom, you're going to love this match I'm about to have. And they were so cool to work with. So that's definitely up there on my list. But I've been really lucky to be in the ring with so many amazing people that it's kind of hard to pick a favorite. I always love wrestling my boyfriend, Travis Jacobs. We've had 3 matches against each other now, I think. That's been a ton of fun. I had a program with Ruthless Lala this year at Pro Wrestling Magic. That was last year now. Still not accustomed to 2024 and we're in February. And that was a really cool experience. But yeah, I've been fortunate to be in the ring with so many amazing workers.
And now this kind of answered the question that I previously who are some of your if there's multiple of your dream opponents in the future?
Well, I think we can already guess the first one. Wherever Mercedes Sasha ends up, obviously I would love to have that opportunity. But there's also, so many talented women on the indies that I haven't gotten to work with yet. I was just talking to another promoter about this. I absolutely loved getting to be I was in a multi-woman match against Ultraviolet. I loved being in the ring with her. I would love to be able to get in the ring with Billie Stark she is so talented. It's crazy what she's been able to do so young. And honestly, like from my time in NXT, I absolutely loved the way Kiana James, she was one of my close friends, works, but we never really got in the ring together. So that would have been cool.
Kiana James, okay. Sasha, Billy Starks, okay.
You were part of that 2022 class. I do remember that too. So
yes, yeah.
I do remember. So that was a really good class too. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Oh, well. Absolutely. Sometimes I get cropped out of those pictures. I don't take it personally. Oh my God. Like people will post the class of 2022 and they'll be like, oh my God, this was such an overpowered class. And there's just, a little crap right here. And I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, that's fair. Whatever.
I mean, everybody does things. As always say, everybody's trajectory is always different. So, I mean, you're doing your thing. Yeah. You're doing your thing in the indie. So we always say kudos to you for that too.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. So I got a question for you now as well. So we know we were talking before we got on here, and you said you've been called Mimi in your life. So yes. What was your influence or meaning behind the Notorious Mimi?
So yeah, Mimi has been a nickname for me since I was literally like 1. I gave it to myself. I'm pretty sure I just couldn't say Amelia fully, which is my real name. So to me, that part has just been my name forever. But the Notorious bit, as we can observe, I'm very ginger and no one else in my family is at all. And my mom was a huge Conor McGregor fan before he kind of went off the rails. So there was like a running joke that he was my real dad, hence the Notorious Mimi.
Oh my God. All right. I mean,
I like it.
Kind of unusual.
I mean, it's a great story when you really tell it like that. It's full of humor, but also meaning. I get it, definitely. I definitely understand. So, and we were talking about just previous opponents and different things like that. So I have one question. So what was it like getting that call from WWE and receiving a tryout?
So I didn't get a call from them for the tryout. I got an Instagram DM and I thought I was getting catfished. I was like, there is no way that I just got offered a WWE tryout through an Instagram DM. But at that time, I guess that was the way the WWE recruit page was reaching out to people. So I looked at it. I was like, this can't be real. But yeah, I went through the page. It was verified and all that. And then eventually, they did email me with follow-up stuff. But I didn't get a call for the initial tryout at any point. I just got that. And I was like, there's no way this is real. But it was.
That's interesting.
What's an unusual way to
I mean, yeah, usually everything's typically calls. So for it to be like an Instagram message and then your mindset is like, is this legit? I get it. I get it. Because you're wondering,
I was very confused for a bit. The email follow-ups made it, much more clear that it was real. But at first I was like, there is no way.
So I definitely understand. So what was your experience like in NXT?
It was honestly so amazing. I always tell people, I'm like, I love my job. I hated Florida. So it balanced out very much. I have lived in Pennsylvania and New Jersey my whole life. So moving to Florida was a very big climate adjustment. But the actual job at NXT was so cool. It's like the equivalent of going to a wrestling college. You're there almost like a full 9 to 5, basically a full 9 to 5 was what I was doing of in-ring promo practice, getting to just work with other people and feel them out and learn about other people's styles of wrestling. We would do tape study and stuff like that. It was a really concentrated way to learn a lot in a short period. It was really cool.
Right. I do remember that if you worked for WWE, you had to relocate to Florida. So I do remember that. That was one of the
unfortunately. I do remember that. I fully believe that Miami is nice and some of the more South Florida, because people are always surprised when I say this. And normally it's people who've lived in nice Florida. And I'm like, but Orlando is just Disney traffic and crazy people. And no one knows how to drive. And that's everything.
Oh boy.
You're just used to the tri-state area.
I mean, I've heard people don't drive the best here either, but in my opinion, in comparison, Florida, it's nothing.
I think everywhere people don't know how to drive. Let's put that.
So here's my theory, right? Everyone drives weird, but here everyone drives weird kind of in the same way. I think the thing with Florida is no one grew up in Orlando. Everyone who comes to Orlando is an import from somewhere else. I came from New Jersey. Someone probably came from Seattle, So everyone brings their different weird driving habits into one place and they just do not mesh well because no one knows how to react to other people.
Right. No, I get it. So you've made multiple appearances now in other big promotions, such as AEW, ROH, and now MLW. So you've also made appearances in other promotions, such as AXW, which is on the rise. What was your mindset like in working for those promotions?
I mean, as long as there's people in the crowd and there's an opponent for me to face, it's basically the same thing, more or less. Obviously, it's amazing for an opportunity like AEW or NXT where you're going to be on national television and seen by hundreds of thousands of people, but it really all feels the same. It's just the response afterwards will be bigger, obviously, if you're on a television program, but interacting with the crowd can feel just as electrifying with like 80 people as a crowd with a couple thousand. It just depends on the crowd and how into the match they are.
Right. I know I saw your AEW one recently, and then I also saw some old videos of when you went to Indie. So I saw the reactions from the crowd, and yeah, I could definitely understand what you're saying with that, because sometimes it is different. Even smaller crowds could just make it seem like it's a big place. So I definitely understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
So another question I have, speaking of crowds and other promotions you've been in, what is your favorite title that you won, or most memorable championship victory?
I think my most memorable championship victory has to be, as I mentioned before, I've wrestled my boyfriend, Travis Jacobs. My indie retirement match before I went to NXT was against him for unifying the women's title and the Supersonic title at the Monster Factory. And I beat him, and then that was supposed to be like my last match, and it was just such an emotional night. It was so cool. The film crew was there, so that's part of the Apple TV Plus series, and that was such an amazing experience. Like, it was a little stressful because I was quite literally reporting to the Performance Center 2 days after that, so I was like, okay, I can't get hurt, but it was really cool to get to have like a full-on farewell match.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's definitely something memorable, so I definitely understand that too. Yeah. So now, speaking of wrestling styles and different things, is it true that you have a background in Taekwondo?
It is. It's not as extensive as some people, which is why you don't see me frequently pull like a full MMA gimmick or anything. For 3 years from 17 to 20, 17 to 19, I did train in Taekwondo, and it was an amazing experience. I think it's really helped me understand, the basis of wrestling more. And also it's just great exercise and so fun to learn a really different fighting style.
Right. That's what I was wondering. So you actually answered one of my other questions. Just like, would that be something you incorporate more into your fighting style, more into future matches and different things like that as well?
I mean, you can definitely see it in the amount of kicks I throw. I'm a very kick-heavy wrestler. Yes,
the bicycle kick. Yep, I do see that. Yep.
Yeah, but I don't think you would see it fully take over my moveset unless I returned to Taekwondo and became more proficient in it, just because the people you see who, use those movesets, those styles, are usually people who are absolutely masters at the other genre of what they do. So like people who have like a black belt in BJJ or Taekwondo, or, were professional mat wrestlers, like amateur wrestlers before they wrestled. So I like incorporating it, but I don't want to make it quite the focus because I don't think I dedicated enough of a massive period of time to it to take that gimmick,
Right. No, I understand. You just want to just incorporate bits and pieces, which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of gives you the personality and just shows that you have it. So I understand.
Yeah.
And then the other question I have for you is, who has given you the best advice, whether it's on wrestling or just in general life so far?
It's a good question.
Had to make you think there a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. I find advice from so many different people, but I think you take bits and pieces from everyone as you go. I've been lucky to be trained by so many wonderful people. So I've taken bits and pieces from Danny, from Misty, who also trains us at the factory, from Ricky Reyes, from my coaches at the PC, who were predominantly Norman Smiley, Robbie Brookside, and AJ Alexander James, formerly in WXW. And yeah, I think you also learn so much from your opponents, but that's kind of not spoken advice as much as it is just experience. I've kind of taken little bits from everyone.
Right. And that's a good way of going about everything. Definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, last year, you were ranked in the top 250 women wrestlers, according to Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So congratulations on that achievement.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Now, where do you see yourself like this year? Like in terms of like in terms of like rankings, right? Are you like, is that something that's like, you know, in your thoughts, like, oh, I want to crack like top 100 or, you know?
It's not something I think about too much, to be completely frank. Because as I'm sure you've known, the PWI ranking combines both actual skill level with like booking and like whether or not you've held titles and what tournaments you've won. And I kind of go all over the place. I don't really hold like titles or have long runs anywhere because I kind of try to branch out as much as possible and just debut at different places and hold storylines and stuff like that. So even though I always feel so honored to be on a list like that and it's so cool, I don't spend too much time worrying about whether or not I'll make it on the list or what place my list on the list I would fall, because I only have so much control over that. It's mostly about you know, championships and tournaments and stuff like that, which to me the more important thing is being able to get like crowd reactions and make my opponent look good and look good myself and all that type of stuff. So I'd say I hold it with some importance, but I don't wake up, you know, thinking this year I'm gonna be 195. Like
no, right.
I want to look good and make other people look good, and if a ranking happens along the way, that's really awesome. And I was really excited to be on it this year.
I would think that if you're doing all that stuff, I think that if anything, your ranking will probably even go up more. That's just our honest opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, it can only go up, pretty much.
I mean,
what is your ultimate goal in wrestling?
I've talked about this recently. It's definitely changed since I was signed and fired. Because that was an amazing experience, but it also kind of was like my main goal for so long was to get signed. I always had dreamed of that whole process and going to the performance center and learning from there. And I don't think I really have like a concrete ultimate goal anymore. I think it's more so just kind of see where I end up and just let that path play out, because I've really been enjoying wrestling more than I ever have since after that experience, because there's been so much less pressure. And I think by not putting as much pressure on it, you know, it's allowed me to be a better wrestler, if anything, because you're not overthinking anything.
When you speak about pressure, is it like pressure like making sure like your matches are, you know, well performed, or like pressure with like connecting with fans?
So I think the problem is when you are putting pressure on yourself, you're kind of doing it on the wrong things, where you're focusing on making sure your match is like crisp and perfect, but you should be focusing on like crowd interaction and making sure the fans feel involved. And I think by not feeling all that pressure to, you know, walk through a match a million times or make sure you've got the lines that you exactly want to say for a promo and just listening to what's going on in the crowd and reacting to that, it lets you be a lot more fluid and give the fans the performance that it sounds like they want to see instead of what you already had planned to do.
And what can we expect from Mimi in 2024?
Well, I'm really hoping to mostly just be continuing to travel. I have potentially another international thing lined up, which I'm really excited about. That's been one of my goals, is to get out of the country more. I was lucky enough to make my debut in Canada last year, and I'm hoping to check another country, at least one more, off the list this year. And then, yeah, besides that, you know, you can see me tearing it up everywhere. I've just been having so much fun going to new promotions, meeting new people, fighting new people. It's been amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
And the final question, what advice would you give to someone wanting to, you know, who wants to become a pro wrestler?
Find a chiropractor.
Oh God.
everyone comes from a different place when they decide they want to wrestle. So I don't necessarily think there's too many, you know, one size fits all pieces of advice, but I think one that is important is, and this was something that I would tell like anyone who would listen basically, is make sure you find the time to enjoy it while you're on the journey. I know a lot of people, especially when they're first starting out, will be like so stressed out about their first match in front of a crowd that you like won't remember it at all. This is something I experienced for sure. Is like probably my first like 5 or 10 matches, I was so nervous that like I never like stopped and was like, oh, this is really cool. I'm actually wrestling in front of a crowd. This is something I dreamed about doing. So I always tell people to like, because when you're wrestling, you know, when you're new, you're too nervous to really try to take that time while you're out there. Like before you go out, just look around for a minute and be like, oh, this is really cool. I actually get to do this. Because if you're gonna beat yourself up and need a chiropractor, you might as well remember like how cool it is that you made it this far and take a little bit to be proud of yourself for doing it.
Right. No, it's true. It's like, I mean, I wouldn't know, but I'm saying like if you want to become a pro wrestler, you have to like take in all these different factors. It's like, all right, can you handle the pressure? Can you handle, because with the pressure is like, all right, we previously mentioned the crowd, the match, also the travel, you know. That does take a lot of toll on you and your body.
I think I need more of a chiropractor for the amount of time I spend in a car, more than just the bumps. The bumps are one thing, but the car is worse.
That's one thing as just wrestling fans in general. I think a lot of wrestling fans don't realize that wrestlers don't always take planes and everything. They do cars and buses, and there's a lot of like aches and pains. I think that's one thing that exploring just how you travel too, I think sort of makes the fans more humble, I think too. I think they understand that they go through the same amount of stuff. So I think that's a good thing to hear too, just like cars and crammed in cars, because I know there's obviously they travel together, so I get it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for taking the opportunity to chat with us. As wrestling fans, we love learning more about you as a wrestler, your views on the business, and your experience throughout various promotions. Because at such a young age, you've got first taste at what like the wrestling business is all about. You can listen to the audio version of this episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you want to see the full video, check us out on YouTube. You can also check our link tree at Sunset Flip Wrestling Podcast to access past episodes and our social media pages. We'll also like to thank American Xcellence Wrestling for making this all happen. I definitely recommend everyone. Yeah, shout out to them, and I definitely recommend everyone to check them out. So everyone, the Notorious Mimi, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, of course, and hopefully we can have a part 2 in the future.
Of course,
So that will do it for us at the Sunset Flip Wrestling Podcast. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. Till next time.